So you didn't actually start your day today. You kind of just, well, stepped into it.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
I mean, think about it. You are basically sitting in a waiting room right now for a train that honestly doesn't even exist.
Right.
And you're totally convinced that the waiting room is just this, temporary distraction. Picture your morning today. The alarm goes off, you grab your phone, you squint at the screen.
Well, we scroll through a bunch of notifications, right?
Exactly. You drag yourself out of bed, start the coffee, begin the commute, and it's like everything went according to plan. But hidden inside that really mundane, frictionless routine is this deeply uncomfortable reality.
Yeah, it's what we call the illusion of momentum.
The illusion of momentum.
Right, because we have this hardwired cognitive bias.
Yeah.
We sort of equate physical motion with actually living.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like you're moving through all the required physical sequences, working, eating, sleeping, paying the bills.
Yeah.
So your brain naturally just registers all that activity as quote-unquote life.
But motion isn't presence.
Exactly. Motion is not presence at all.
Which brings us to the core of today's deep dive. We are exploring this rather haunting Vietnamese philosophical essay today.
It really is haunting.
It is. The title translates to the pasted text or the copied document, and the entire premise just forces us to look in the mirror and ask what sounds like a ridiculous question.
But it's not.
No, it's not. The question is, are you actually living your life, or are you just perpetually preparing to live?
And once that question gets into your head, it really acts like a virus.
Totally.
It just completely reorients how you view your entire schedule. I mean, if everything you're doing right now is merely like preparation for some undefined future state.
What exactly is this current moment?
Exactly. What are you doing right now?
Okay, let's unpack this because we really need to be clear right out of the gate here.
Yeah.
We are not doing a productivity deep dive today.
Definitely not. No life hacks here.
Right. We aren't optimizing your morning routine. We are not talking about cold plunges or time blocking.
Thank goodness.
This is about a fundamental, really structural shift in how we experience ordinary, unglamorous time. The essay's central argument is that we have this universal human habit of treating real life as something that's permanently stationed just around the corner.
Always just out of reach.
Always. We tell ourselves, when I finally have a little more money in savings, then I'll do what I want. Or when I get that manager title.
Or when I lose 10 pounds.
Yes. When the kids are finally out of the house, then my actual life begins.
And those statements are so incredibly seductive, right? Because they totally masquerade as rationality.
They sound responsible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Society actively rewards that mindset. We label this endless deferral of the present as preparation. And preparation sounds mature, it sounds responsible.
But it's really just procrastination.
It's a highly sophisticated form of procrastination, yes. We never call it what it actually is.
It goes back to that waiting room analogy. It's like you're sitting in the train station, you've got your luggage all neatly stacked.
You're constantly checking the departure board.
Buying that overpriced, terrible station coffee just to pass the time.
Oh, yeah.
And you're treating the entire environment in the waiting room as just a trivial precursor. Like, this isn't the destination, this is just the before part.
But the horrifying twist here is that the train isn't on any schedule.
Right.
No one is coming to punch your ticket.
Ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is how seamlessly this essay maps onto the core of existentialism.
Specifically Albert Camus, right?
Yes, specifically Camus. I mean, anyone familiar with his work knows his focus on the absurd.
The tension between wanting meaning and the universe just giving us silence.
Exactly, total silence. But applying the absurd to this specific concept of preparation is just brilliant.
How so?
Well, the greatest absurdity isn't a lack of cosmic meaning. The greatest absurdity is that we operate our daily lives as if meaning will just magically activate on some unspecified Tuesday in the future.
Like a switch flipping.
Right. We live as if there's this day circled on the calendar labeled Start Real Life.
Even though we have literally zero empirical evidence that that date actually exists.
Zero.
And culturally, we practically fetishize that future date. We're completely sold on this grand illusion of the big change.
Oh, absolutely.
We've decided that truly living requires this massive cinematic upheaval, like escaping the waiting room means you have to dramatically quit your corporate job.
Toss your smartphone into a river.
Move to a cabin in the woods, make artisan pottery.
Which, according to the text, is just another layer of the exact same trap.
Wait, really? The Big Escape is a trap too.
Yeah, because if you frame real life as this massive, dramatic event, it basically guarantees that you will remain paralyzed.
Oh, I see.
If the barrier to entry for living is a monumental life overhaul, you are always going to feel unready.
Right, you'll always need to save just a little more money.
Or read one more self-help book before you make the leap.
So you stay in the waiting room.
Exactly. True living, at least from this philosophical standpoint, is entirely devoid of those grand gestures.
So what is it then?
It's simply the cognitive act of remaining fully present. Like during a completely mundane meal, just refusing to let your mind drift to that spreadsheet you have to finish later.
I want to push back on that a little bit, though.
Sure.
Because if preparing is this massive trap that just quietly steals our lives away, why is it our default setting?
It's a fair question.
It can't just be cultural brainwashing, right? Like, there has to be a psychological payoff for sitting in the waiting room.
Oh, there is. The payoff is absolute safety.
Safety.
Psychologically, preparation is the ultimate buffer against reality. When you exist solely in the preparatory phase, you never actually have to make a definitive commitment.
You never put your chips on the table.
Right. You never have to test your actual capabilities against the unforgiving real world. And most crucially, you cannot fail.
Let's ground that, actually, with the writer example from the text. Because I think everyone knows this person, or honestly has been this person.
Oh, the aspiring novelist.
Yes, the aspiring novelist. They go out and buy the expensive mechanical keyboard.
They download Scrivener.
They subscribe to literally every storytelling masterclass online. They spend hours, months, even organizing character outlines.
They're aggressively preparing.
Aggressively. But they never actually type chapter 1.
No.
And it's so easy to just call that laziness, but looking at it through this lens, I think laziness is a complete misdiagnosis. It's an ego defense mechanism.
Entirely. Because if they actually sit down and write the story, they are forced to confront the gap between their ambition and their current skill level.
And the writing might be objectively terrible.
Exactly. But as long as they are merely preparing to write, they get to retain the fantasy of being this brilliant, undiscovered author.
The preparation protects the idealized self.
Yes, it protects them from the bruising reality of actual execution.
It's the preservation of potential. Like the exact moment you take action, your infinite potential collapses into a finite, flawed reality.
That is so well said. And it connects perfectly to Jean-Paul Sartre's concept that we are condemned to be free.
Right. And without turning this into a Philosophy 101 lecture, the weight of that phrase really hits differently in this context.
It does. Sartre's observation that freedom is a condemnation is so applicable here because there is no external authority coming to validate your readiness.
Nobody's coming to ring a bell and say, okay, start.
No bell will ring. You are entirely, terrifyingly responsible for initiating your own life. So if you remain in the preparation phase, you successfully avoid exercising that terrifying freedom.
Because if you start right now under your current highly imperfect conditions, all the excuses just evaporate.
Yeah.
You can't blame a lack of time or your chaotic apartment. It's just you facing the blank page.
Kafka captured this paralysis perfectly, by the way.
With the doorways.
Yeah, the recurring motif he has of characters standing paralyzed before open doors.
There are no locks.
No locks, no guards preventing entry. Yet they stand on the threshold, just desperate for an explicit sign or some figure of authority to grant them permission to enter.
And they wait until the door eventually closes.
Exactly. They miss the entirety of their lives, not due to systemic exclusion, but because they convinced themselves they weren't fully prepared to cross the threshold.
Wow. That really evokes Søren Kierkegaard's concept of silent despair.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we tend to imagine despair as this really loud, theatrical breakdown, someone weeping on the floor.
Smashing things.
Right. But the despair Kierkegaard identified is much more insidious. It's the quiet, daily tragedy of inhabiting a life that feels like an ill-fitting suit simply because the discomfort is familiar.
We actively choose the low-grade ache of the waiting room over the sharp terror of actually beginning.
We really do. And, we are heavily incentivized to do so from childhood.
Oh, of course. Our entire societal infrastructure is just a perfectly calibrated machine of deferred living.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the societal treadmill we are all placed on is an absolute masterclass in shifting goalposts.
It never ends.
Never. Think about the narrative arc we're handed. In middle school, your entire job is to prepare for high school.
In high school, you have to build the perfect resume to prepare for college.
In college, you are preparing to secure that entry-level job. And then what? Then you wait for financial stability, then the promotion, then the house, then retirement.
Morton Heidegger actually categorized this human operating system. He called it living perpetually in the state of the not yet.
The not yet, or in Vietnamese chua, as the text notes.
Exactly. We possess this incredible capacity to view the present moment strictly as raw material, just fuel to be burned for some future state.
So the present has zero inherent value.
Right. Its only utility is what it can hypothetically purchase for us down the line.
That creates a psychological closed loop that you can never escape.
No, you can't.
It's almost like playing an RPG video game, right? Where you completely ignore the actual gameplay, you ignore the story, the environment.
Because you are exclusively focused on grinding to reach the maximum level.
Exactly.
That analogy is spot on. Because if your fundamental cognitive framework is built on the premise that the future is inherently superior to the present, then the system inevitably crashes when the future actually arrives.
Because the future instantly becomes the present.
Yes. And your brain is already deeply conditioned to devalue the present.
Oh, wow.
So you look at your new reality, the degree you finally earned, the promotion you secured, and within days, your brain labels it as not enough.
So you project your salvation onto the next horizon.
You get the briefest hit of dopamine, and then the not yet engine just fires right back up.
Yeah.
You are forever chasing a mirage that recedes exactly as fast as you run toward it.
That is exhausting.
It is. And it leads us to a pretty brutal, necessary confrontation.
Okay.
If we revisit Camus, he famously posited that the only serious philosophical problem is suicide.
Right, whether life without inherent meaning is actually worth continuing.
Exactly. But applying that to our not yet treadmill takes the question to an even darker place.
How so?
Well, if there is no magical real life waiting for you at the end of the preparation phase, if the horizon is a complete illusion, then what are you actually doing right now? Stripping away the comforting fantasy of the future forces a naked confrontation with the present.
And that present might be painfully unglamorous. It might be steeped in boredom or fraught with conflict.
Precisely. The future acts as our favorite psychological escape hatch. We use the fantasy of tomorrow to dissociate from a today we simply refuse to engage with.
But let's look at the mechanics of this in our daily routines. Because, I mean, we still have to pay rent, we still have to attend the budget meetings, we have to fold the laundry.
Life goes on.
Right. So if we operate in this not yet mindset, what is the tangible ground level cost for us?
The danger really lies in the subtlety of the cost.
Subtle how?
Well, imagine sitting at the dining table with your family on a completely unremarkable Wednesday.
Okay.
You are physically occupying a chair, but cognitively you are entirely absent. You're reviewing an email draft in your head, planning for a meeting that happens in 14 hours.
And the terrifying part is that in that exact moment, no alarms go off.
No.
You don't feel a profound cinematic sense of tragedy. You don't feel like you are actively destroying your life. You just feel reasonably busy.
Yet that specific configuration of reality, that exact afternoon, the specific ages of the people around you right then, the way the light hits the room, it's permanently gone. The toll of the not yet mindset is not a sudden catastrophic implosion. It is the steady, rhythmic dripping of water on a stone.
Like a slow leak in a tire.
Exactly. Over decades, that imperceptible dripping hollows out the rock. You don't lose your life in massive dramatic failures. You lose it in the vast gray blur of ordinary days that you basically sleepwalk through because your consciousness was living 24 hours in the future.
Man, the slow leak is a much more terrifying concept than a blowout.
It really is.
And it perfectly explains that classic archetype of the exhausted, grinding professional.
One who sacrifices their presence for 15 years.
Yes, telling themselves and their family that they are simply preparing a beautiful, secure future. And they return home every single evening completely hollowed out, incapable of actual conversation or connection.
Because they view their current exhaustion as a noble down payment on a future reality.
But by the time that theoretical future actually arrives, maybe they finally hit the financial milestone or they retire, the relationships they were supposedly securing have completely evaporated.
Not from explosive betrayals?
No, from a decade of micro-abandonments.
They successfully prepared for a future life, entirely at the expense of the one they were actually inhabiting.
That reminds me of the essay quoting Marcus Aurelius. He famously wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think."
Which is incredibly powerful.
It is, but usually we see that plastered on like a motivational poster and just scroll past it on Instagram.
Right, it's become a cliche.
But injecting that Stoic principle into this specific conversation changes the entire texture of the quote.
It ceases to be a cliche and becomes an urgent grounding technique. Because Marcus Aurelius wasn't advocating for a reckless, YOLO-induced panic.
He wasn't saying abandon your responsibilities and max out your credit cards because mortality is imminent.
No, not at all. It's an auditing tool for your attention.
An auditing tool.
Yeah. If today is not really a stepping stone, if this specific Tuesday is the totality of your existence, how does that alter the mechanics of your behavior?
Like, how do you hold your coffee mug?
Exactly. How actively do you listen when your partner speaks?
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second because the counter argument is very real.
Go for it.
Let's say I completely adopt this framework. I drop my 10-year plan. I stop viewing my career as an endless preparation phase, and I commit to being radically present.
Okay.
I have to be honest, I think I would just feel completely untethered. It sounds like a recipe for a massive existential crisis. I mean, if I don't have a target, I kind of don't know who I am.
And that feeling of being untethered is a highly documented psychological response. It's completely valid.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Consider the phenomenon of the chronically busy person on a true day off. You know, you wake up on a Sunday, there are 0 deadlines, 0 emails to send, 0 chores to complete. The slate is entirely blank. Does that trigger a profound sense of liberating joy?
Absolutely not. For me, it triggers a low-grade humming anxiety.
Exactly.
I feel a void that is so uncomfortable, I almost immediately reach for my phone to doom scroll. Or I suddenly decide, like, I absolutely need to reorganize my garage right now.
Because you literally fabricate targets. Existing without one feels like free-falling.
It really does.
And that's because we've been culturally conditioned to derive our entire identity and self-worth from forward momentum. We equate velocity with value.
So when the velocity drops to 0,
we encounter a terrifying emptiness. And this is where Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy becomes highly practical.
How so?
Well, Nietzsche argued that a critical component of human development is learning to endure the absence of meaning.
Endure it, not immediately try to fix it.
Precisely. Endure it. If your psychological stability requires a constant influx of goals, projects, and milestones just to feel alive, you are doomed to an endless sprint.
Wait, you'll never get to stop.
You never stop. You have to build the internal tolerance to sit in a quiet room, completely unoptimized, and simply exist, without demanding that the moment justify itself by serving some higher purpose.
It's fascinating how we've managed to twist philosophy itself into a tool for the not yet mindset.
Oh, we definitely have.
I mean, modern hustle culture has completely hijacked Stoicism, turning it into a productivity hack.
Yeah, we read Marcus Aurelius or Seneca not to find peace, but to optimize our morning routines so we can crush our Q3 deliverables.
We strip mine ancient philosophy for efficiency tactics.
We really do.
Yeah.
But true Stoicism, specifically the directive to focus on what you can control, is wildly misunderstood today.
Right, because hustle culture interprets that as controlling your calendar, controlling your diet, and your output to engineer this perfect future.
But the actual application is far more immediate. The only variable you possess absolute empirical control over is the allocation of your attention in this exact razor-thin sliver of the present.
So it's asking, are you actually processing the words your friend is saying, or are you just waiting for your turn to speak?
Exactly. Are you tasting the texture of your meal, or are you just shoveling fuel into your biological machine so you can get back to staring at a screen?
Because life is not a project to be completed.
No, it is a sequence of moments to be inhabited.
When you walk from your car to the office, are you feeling the temperature of the air and the pavement under your shoes? Or has your consciousness already teleported to the conference room?
It's that slight pivot in perspective that changes everything.
It really does. So let's synthesize all of this. What is the fundamental takeaway from dismantling this waiting room mentality?
I think the revelation is incredibly freeing.
Freeing.
Yeah. You do not need to blow up your life to start living.
Right, you don't need to quit your job.
You don't need to move across the world, and you don't need to completely overhaul your personality. You simply need to stop delaying your presence.
Because real life is not an exclusive club waiting for you at the end of a grueling, decades-long path of preparation.
It's unfolding right now, hidden inside the mundane, ordinary moments that we habitually ignore because we've classified them as not important enough to count.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
the ultimate question we are left with is one that demands an honest, daily audit.
Which is?
In any given moment today, were you fully occupying your own life? Are you living to live, or are you living to prepare to live?
That is the kind of question that just rewires your brain.
It really is.
And as we close out this deep dive today, I want to leave you with one final kind of provocative concept to carry with you.
Go, I like this.
We've spent this entire time discussing how life is sequestered in the overlooked, ordinary gaps between our major milestones. So I want you to think deeply about the nature of nostalgia.
Nostalgia.
We all feel it. But consider what nostalgia actually is mechanically. What if nostalgia is simply your brain realizing, decades after the fact, that those quiet, unprepared for, seemingly trivial in-between moments that you just rushed through, what if they were actually the absolute peak of your life?
Wow.
What if the utterly ordinary, frictionless Tuesday morning you stepped into today, the alarm, the smell of the coffee, the quiet commute, what if this exact unremarkable moment is precisely the good old days you will desperately, painfully wish to return to 20 years from now?
Framing it that way instantly transforms a boring Tuesday into something incredibly precious.
It changes the entire color of the day.
It really does.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Wherever you are heading next, whatever mundane task is waiting for you, we encourage you to truly radically be there. We'll catch you next time.